December 18th, 1944, 06:30 hours, Bastogne, Belgium. Oberleutnant Klaus Hartmann crouched in the frozen rubble of what used to be a bakery, his breath forming white clouds in the sub-zero air. Through his Zeiss binoculars, he watched American soldiers 400 yards away, passing around something that made no sense. They were eating cake, fresh cake, with frosting. Hartmann had been behind enemy lines for 6 days. He'd seen Americans with new boots when German soldiers wrapped their feet in newspaper. He'd watched them discard ammunition his own unit would kill for. But this was different. The cake was still soft. He could see the frosting hadn't cracked. In temperatures that turned sea rations into frozen blocks, these men were eating bakery fresh cake decorated with red and green icing. Before we continue with Klaus Hartmann's incredible discovery, we need your help to keep these forgotten stories alive. If you're already hooked by what you're hearing, hit that like button right now. It tells YouTube to share this with more people who care about real history. Subscribe to this channel so you never miss another story of courage and innovation from World War II. And here's something we love. Drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Your country, your city. We have viewers from Buenos Aires to Berlin, from Manila to Montreal. Are you a veteran? Did your grandfather serve? Do you have a connection to this war? We want to hear from you. Now back to Bastogne, December 18th, 1944, where Hartmann was photographing something that would change German intelligence assessments forever. The cake shouldn't exist. Not here, not now. Hartmann had been trained at Abwehr headquarters in Berlin. He spoke perfect English, with a Michigan accent, learned from 2 years at the University of Michigan before the war. His mission was simple: infiltrate American lines, assess their supply situation, report weaknesses. For 3 weeks, German high command had been convinced the American advance was overextended. Their supply lines had to be breaking. The winter offensive, what the Allies would call the Battle of the Bulge, was designed to exploit that weakness. But Hartmann's photographs told a different story. Klaus Hartmann was born in 1919 in Heidelberg, the son of a philosophy professor who'd visited America multiple times. At 25, Hartmann was neither the youngest nor oldest intelligence officer, but he had something rare. He understood American culture not from propaganda, but from living it. He'd eaten at diners in Ann Arbor. He'd watched baseball games. He'd dated an American girl named Dorothy who worked at the campus library and dreamed of opening a bookstore in Boston. That knowledge of American normalcy made what he was witnessing even more incomprehensible. German intelligence had calculated that American supply lines stretched over 400 miles from the nearest major port. Every gallon of fuel, every bullet, every ration had to travel through a devastated French road network that German forces had methodically destroyed during their retreat. The mathematics seemed simple. The Americans were moving too fast, consuming too much. They had to run out. Between November 8th and December 15th, German forces had captured 47 American supply trucks. Hartmann had reviewed every inventory report. The pattern should have shown desperation, reduced rations, aging equipment, ammunition conservation. Instead, the reports described abundance that seemed impossible. But numbers on paper were easy to dismiss as American propaganda or clerical errors. Fresh cake wasn't. Hartmann's closest friend was Hauptmann Werner Vogel, an intelligence analyst he'd trained with in 1942. Werner was a baker's son from Munich who used to joke that he could assess an army's morale by the quality of its bread. "Show me what a soldier eats," Werner would say, "and I'll tell you if he thinks he's winning." Werner had been assigned to analyze captured American supply manifests at field headquarters in Prüm. 3 days ago, Hartmann had received Werner's last report. It described American supply inventories that included 14 Schulzeren pounds of fresh turkey, 3 200 pounds of cranberry sauce, and 1 800 individually wrapped fruitcakes, all delivered to frontline units for Christmas. Werner had added a handwritten note. "Klaus, either their quartermasters are insane, or we've fundamentally misunderstood their capabilities. Fresh turkey to the front lines? In December." How? On December 16th, a German artillery barrage hit the intelligence post in Prüm. Werner Vogel died instantly, along with 4 other analysts. He was 26 years old. His father's bakery in Munich had been destroyed by Allied bombing 6 months earlier. Hartmann carried Werner's last report in his coat pocket. Now, watching Americans eat fresh cake 400 yards away, he understood what his friend had been trying to say. The Americans weren't just winning the logistics war, they'd redefined what logistics meant. The problem wasn't American manufacturing capacity. German intelligence knew about Detroit's factories, about the industrial output of a nation untouched by bombing. The problem wasn't even the quantity of supplies crossing the Atlantic. German U-boats had reported the scale of Allied convoys. The problem was speed. The problem was distribution. The problem was that somehow, impossibly, fresh-baked goods were reaching foxholes faster than German ammunition reached their own forward positions. Hartmann spent the next 4 days documenting everything. He photographed supply dumps where crates were stacked 20 feet high, marked with delivery dates from 3 days earlier. He watched a convoy of 40 trucks arrive with supplies that included fresh bread, real coffee, cigarettes, wool socks, and chocolate bars. He noted the organization, color-coded crates, numerical systems, efficiency that seemed almost mechanical. On December 20th, Hartmann infiltrated an abandoned American supply depot near Malmedy. What he found there would form the basis of his final report, the one that would reach Berlin 3 days before Christmas and shatter German strategic assumptions. The depot had been evacuated in a hurry when German forces approached. The Americans had taken their weapons and radios, but left hundreds of supply crates, not because they were precious, but because they knew more were coming. Hartmann spent 6 hours documenting the contents, case after case of rations packed in December 1944. Fresh dates on everything. Canned fruit from California packed 3 weeks ago. Butter churned in Wisconsin on December 8th. Coffee roasted in New Orleans on December 12th. But what stopped Hartmann cold was a crate of medical supplies. Inside were 200 units of penicillin, each vial manufactured at a Pfizer plant in Brooklyn on December 5th. The miracle drug that could stop infections, save lives from wounds that would kill any German soldier, manufactured 15 days ago, now sitting in a Belgian warehouse 400 miles from the factory. Hartmann had seen German medical supplies, bandages made from paper because cotton was scarce, morphine so precious it was reserved for officers, sulfur powder as the only defense against infection, and never enough of it. The Americans were shipping penicillin to the front lines like it was candy. That night, Hartmann began writing his report. In a frozen church basement, his hands shaking from more than cold. He'd been trained to assess enemy weaknesses. Instead, he was documenting a form of warfare Germany couldn't match. The report detailed what he called the logistics of abundance. While German supply officers calculated the minimum calories needed to keep soldiers fighting, American quartermasters were shipping Christmas cakes. While German trucks broke down for lack of spare parts, American convoys had mobile repair units that could rebuild an engine in 4 hours. While German soldiers marched because fuel was too precious for trucks, American supply lines had dedicated petroleum battalions that laid pipelines across France. Hartmann included specific numbers. American supply convoys averaged 47 miles per hour on damaged roads. German convoys averaged 18. The average American soldier received 12 pounds of supplies per day. The average German soldier received 4. American supply depots maintained 30-day reserves at the front. German forces operated on 3-day reserves. The Americans had 347,000 trucks in the European theatre. Germany had 112,000 for all fronts combined. But the most damning evidence was the cake, Hartmann wrote. The enemy's ability to deliver fresh baked goods to forward positions indicates a supply system operating at such efficiency that we must reconsider our strategic assumptions. This is not simply material superiority. This is industrial-scale logistics applied with a precision that allows for luxuries we cannot provide our soldiers, even in rear areas. An army that can deliver fresh cake to surrounded positions in sub-zero temperatures cannot be defeated by cutting supply lines. Their supply system is redundant, flexible, and operating with margins that render traditional interdiction tactics obsolete. On December 22nd, Hartmann made his way back to German lines near St. Vith. He carried his camera, his notes, and Werner's last report. He also carried 2 American chocolate bars and a partially frozen piece of Christmas cake he'd recovered from an abandoned American position. Physical evidence. At the intelligence briefing in Prüm, now relocated after the artillery strike, Hartmann presented his findings to a room of skeptical officers. Several laughed when he mentioned the cake. One colonel called it propaganda. Another suggested Hartmann had been deceived by elaborate American deception tactics. Then Hartmann produced the cake, still partially soft despite 3 days in sub-zero temperatures. Red and green frosting clearly visible. He passed it around the room. The laughter stopped. Hartmann's report was forwarded up the chain of command. Copies reached Field Marshal von Rundstedt's headquarters on December 24th. A summary reached Berlin on December 26th. The conclusion was buried in paragraph 14 of a 30-page document, sandwiched between assessments of American tank capabilities and infantry tactics. By then, the Battle of the Bulge was already failing. German forces, promised fuel supplies that never arrived, were running out of gasoline. American forces, supplied by the same logistics system that delivered Christmas cake, were counterattacking with full fuel tanks and warm meals. The official German Army assessment, classified until 1972, included this line: American logistics capabilities exceed previous estimates by a factor of 3-4. Enemy's ability to maintain supply superiority in adverse conditions suggests fundamental organizational advantages. Recommend strategic reassessment. The reassessment never came. Germany had 5 months left. Hartmann survived the war. He surrendered to American forces in April 1945 near Nuremberg. During interrogation, he asked his American captors about the logistics system. They took him to a supply depot. He watched as trucks arrived with fresh bread baked that morning 60 miles away. He saw the color-coded crating system, the inventory manifests, the efficiency that had haunted his intelligence reports. One American supply sergeant, a man from Ohio named Robert Mills, showed Hartmann the bakery truck, a mobile oven mounted on a 2 5-ton truck bed. "We got 150 of these," Mills said. "Fresh bread every day, no matter where the front line is." Hartmann asked about the Christmas cakes from Bastogne. Mills laughed. "Hell, that was special. We got bakeries in Paris working 24 hours to make Christmas packages for the boys. Fresh cakes, cookies, all decorated. Flew 'em up in supply planes, trucked 'em to the front, even during the siege. Christmas is Christmas, right?" Hartmann was repatriated to Germany in 1946. He returned to Heidelberg, where his father's house had been destroyed by bombing. He found work as a translator for the American occupation forces. Later, he taught English at a gymnasium in Frankfurt. He married in 1951 a woman named Greta, who taught mathematics. They had 2 children. He never returned to intelligence work. Werner Vogel's father, who'd lost both his son and his bakery, reopened a small shop in Munich in 1948. Hartmann visited him once in 1950. They didn't talk much. Werner's father showed him a photograph of his son in uniform, smiled sadly, and gave Hartmann a loaf of bread. "Werner always said you could tell who would win by the bread," the old man said. "I guess he was right." Hartmann died in 1987, at age 68. His obituary in the Frankfurter Allgemeine mentioned his work as an educator and translator. It didn't mention his wartime service. His intelligence reports, declassified in the 1970s, were discovered by American historian Stephen Ambrose while researching logistics for his book, Citizen Soldiers. In 2003, a military logistics symposium at the U.S. Army War College in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, used Hartmann's report as a case study. The lecture was titled "The Cake That Won the War: How American Logistics Defined Modern Military Operations." The professor noted that while tanks and planes won battles, supply chains won wars. The report itself is now in the National Archives in College Park, Maryland. Paragraph 14, the one about fresh cake indicating unbeatable logistics, has been highlighted by multiple researchers. One notation in the margin, added by an unknown archivist, reads simply, "He wasn't wrong." There's no memorial to Klaus Hartmann, no monument to Werner Vogel. The supply sergeant from Ohio, Robert Mills, who proudly showed a German intelligence officer the mobile bakery truck, died in 1992. His obituary mentioned his service, but not that conversation. The Americans who ate fresh Christmas cake in frozen foxholes near Bastogne never knew a German spy had photographed them, never knew their dessert had become evidence of strategic superiority. Most of them just thought the cake tasted pretty good, considering the circumstances. But somewhere in those frozen December days, in the moment a trained German intelligence officer realized his nation was facing an enemy that could deliver fresh frosting to the front lines, the war's outcome became visible. Not in a battle or a bombing raid, but in the simple, impossible fact of cake, where cake had no business being. If this story moved you, if it changed how you think about what really wins wars, hit that like button right now. Subscribe to this channel to hear more forgotten stories of ingenuity and innovation from World War II. Drop a comment below telling us where you're watching from. And if you or your family ever served, share that story. These men saved the world not just with bullets, but with bread, cake, and the unglamorous work of getting supplies where they needed to be. They deserve to be remembered. Thank you for keeping their memory alive.